the whole semester. We just basically spent the full semester working on that project together. They also had like a lot of activities. A lot of the bigger companies will have like weekly activities for the interns. Like we had one of the I think most fun was the hackathon. They had like an internship hackathon, and my team actually ended up winning that. So that was a it's always fun when they have like a hackathon, and you should really like if your company does something like that, you should really participate and do your best because that looks really good for you in the end.
I can go next. So to keep it simple, I did like a full stack web project. Specifically, like I was creating like a dev tool because I was working on the data platforms team over at Xbox Cloud Gaming. And like their method right now for getting logs was kind of like convoluted. They had a lot of manual work being done, so they wanted me to more so automate the process. So it was a lot of fun. Got to use React, C Sharp, and ASP.NET backend. Um, and I got to work with cloud technologies and also did a bit of DevOps with Azure. So yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Dylan.
I can go next as well. So I worked on the Google Cloud Platform team, and within Google Cloud, I worked on Kubernetes. I worked on a developer tools team, and I worked on a CI/CD system, and I worked with Go. It was mainly back-end work, and then I also worked a little bit in the front end with like vanilla HTML, CSS, and Java for TypeScript, actually. Yeah, that was mainly the work I did. Pretty enjoyable.
Thank you, Freddie.
And yeah, so for my stint at Microsoft, I worked on Bing Maps, which is just like any other map service. And essentially, they had some new parking data that they just wanted to be incorporated into a new parking feature. So I prototyped this parking feature, and it mainly involved just kind of like taking this data and just moving it around and getting it to work in their existing APIs and infrastructure.
Very cool. We have a wide range of projects and technologies I see being used by all of these interns here. And that's kind of the big picture here. When you eventually get an internship as a software engineer, you can really be placed on a wide range of projects and technologies. So it's really just a great learning experience that I suggest many of you look into. With that, let's jump into our next commonly asked question, which is, how did you get your first internship? And please offer any resources that you use to get your first internship. This is a very popular question for people who are interested in getting their first internship and don't know where to start.
For my first internship, I really wasn't sure where to look. So I went everywhere. I went Handshake, LinkedIn, basically every job board I can think of, I applied, and I probably applied to, I don't know, at least 1,000 positions just to see, and some of them I just wanted to see what I could get. I did probably 15 different interviews. Some of them were like tiny companies, some of them were unpaid internships. So my first one ended up actually being through Handshake.
Oh, very cool. Thank you, Sam.
I can go next. So I actually got pretty lucky with mine. So I was a senior in high school, and I found the application like on the Palm Beach County School District website, and it was the day it was due. So I applied, and luckily they picked me. I had a bit of like cybersecurity and web exploitation experience, so that's why. Even though I had no web development experience, and I was the only intern they picked up for programming that year because it was like mainly an IT internship. But for resources, I dropped like the list that I used when I was a sophomore in college. It's pretty complete. Like people all around the world like go to this repo and like just collect all the internships they could find. So it's easily accessible. So I definitely just like go down the list, apply to everywhere you can because it really is just a numbers game. So
yeah, thank you, Dylan.
I'll go next. I got my first internship.
He's lagging out.
Yeah, I think you're lagging
conference
out.
That I went to. So I'm part of SHEP, which is Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. engineers. Oh, I'm lagging out.
Yeah,
Can
you're
you
going
hear
Yeah, a
Daft
me?
little
Punk
bit.
on us. We
Is
can't
it
hear
good
you that
now?
well. Better.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think you're okay
Just
now
cam
without the
off.
video. Yeah.
Wait, if I turn off, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to turn
Yeah.
off the camera. Okay, so I went to a conference. It's called GNAC, GMIS. And the club I was mentioning earlier, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, they go to many conferences. And I went to one of those my freshman year. And I feel like it's easier to actually get an internship at one of those conferences. So I went to the conference, interviewed, and I got my first internship through there. So I would recommend, if you get a chance to go to a conference, it's a good
I think he cut out.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, but I assume he said it would be an amazing opportunity if you go to a conference. So we'll fill in the blanks there. Kirk, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. So this is a good question because getting your first internship is probably the hardest part. You know, you got to get the ball rolling somehow. Things you can do before you get your first one is maybe be a TA or have some projects. Or I know a lot of people do the CWEP program here. That's a good way to get started. But to answer the question, the way I got my first one was the cycle of fall 2020. I applied, and I must have applied to 70, 80 places, and I only got one interview, and that was with Walmart Global Tech, and I managed to pass, and that was really fortunate. So yeah, you just got to prepare as best you can, and just hope that to shoot the moon sometimes. But once you get your first one, like you're in, it's so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big picture here is it's really just a numbers game when it comes to applying. Even if the company seems too big, just submit the application and go for it. I think that's the best piece of advice we can take away from here. With that, our next question is, what should you add to your resume? What are some common mistakes you see that many people add to their resumes when applying to these companies?
Yeah, I would say if you don't have previous internship experience, you should definitely focus on projects that you've worked on. And if you don't have any projects, I would start working on projects. That was definitely my first biggest experience. So I would say definitely focus on projects, and I'd say for a common mistake.
Hey, Viana, you mind muting yourself?
So for common mistakes, I would say I see a lot of resumes that I've looked at. People will focus. Well, people will have a lot of experience on the resume that isn't necessarily relevant to like software engineering or computer science or whatever field they're focused on. So I would say really focus on what you're looking for in your resume.
I can go next here. Can you guys hear me, or should I turn off my camera?
You're good right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let me know if it cuts off anytime. I'll just turn off my camera. But I think one thing or I guess I'll start off with the mistake. I think one thing that people overlook is like punctuation. And I've seen many times that recruiters, like, they notice a like mistake or something with like your punctuation or something like misaligned there. They're like, oh, I just missed it right away. Like, I don't really pay attention to it. So like keep an eye out for that, because like I for sure like keep an eye out when I review. So like make sure like spacing is right and stuff. I guess like these recruiters might be more. And so for a suggestion, oh, I'm lagging. Okay.
I think you're better now.
So for a suggestion, any numbers that you can add, sounds good. All right. If you have any numbers that you can add into your resume to show more impact, I would definitely suggest to add them in because they do show value to any recruiter who looks at your resume.
Yeah, definitely. And for those who didn't catch that, Freddie said it's very important to catch punctuation and other grammatical mistakes on your resume, and also quantify your impact as much as you can. Dylan or Kirk, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, I like to tell people to keep it simple. Throughout all of college, my resume has been structured as in like having education first, and then skills, and then experience, and then like a project section. And to just kind of stick to that. Like it's not really a mistake, but I see like objectives pretty often, and like I don't really see objectives doing much. Like I've talked to recruiters and stuff, and they're like, I mean, you're applying to the job, right? Like they know what your objective is to work there. People like tend to use it mainly to like fill up space, and that's okay. But like if there's something to put over an objective, I always recommend it.
Thank you, Dylan.
All right, so what you should add to your resume, there's actually some really common LaTeX templates out there. We could probably post those. I think everybody uses those. So there are templates out there that'll show you exactly what you should have on there. Barring any major grammatical errors or whatever, and as long as you structure it according to this template, I think the hardest thing that you got going for you is just having things to put on the resume that actually help. So if you're just starting out, like I wouldn't worry too much about it because like I said, you can follow these templates. We'll make sure we link those. Someone do that, or maybe I will.
Yeah, if you can, it would be very helpful to link the LaTeX templates and any other resources that any of you mentioned in the chat.
Yeah, I linked them in the chat. Yep.
Amazing. With that, let's move on to the next most commonly asked question, which is how early should you apply? And when did you apply to your most recent internship?
I can take this one real quick. So like immediately, like don't wait. Like apply as early as like August, and even late July. Like it's never too early. Like applications start opening for internships for the following summer in July, in August. I applied to my first one August 1st, and it was still too late because they opened applications July 1st. So yeah, definitely don't wait. It's never too early, and the earlier the better because it takes time for them to reach out to you anyways.
I think to add to that, I think a lot of one of my biggest concerns when I was first applying was I always thought like, am I ready for an internship yet? Like I was really worried that I didn't really have much experience. Nobody's going to really want like someone that doesn't know, that hasn't done anything yet. But I think that like you should really, even if you're a freshman, you've never looked at code before, I think you should even start applying then, because there's a lot of the internships, especially for the early internships, they're not looking for people with experience. They're looking for talented people who are willing to learn most of all. So I'd say, like Dylan was saying, apply as early as possible.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan's absolutely right. The sooner you can apply, the better, because headcount fills, and it gets harder to get those spots later. So yeah, apply when you can. And I applied. I just started going down the Fortune 500 for my first one. I started going maybe in like August. But for my most recent one, I kind of broke my own rule. I applied in October, so maybe don't take that advice. But and also just one more thing, don't be afraid of applying like larger companies. I've never really had much success with smaller ones, just kind of get ignored basically. So larger companies have more headcount, and you'll have a better chance of at least getting seen.
Thank you, Kirk. Freddie, are you still with us?
Yeah, I am. I would just basically say the same thing, apply as early as possible. I think someone mentioned that headcount fills up, and that's definitely true. It can fill up very quickly, especially at smaller companies that barely take any interns in, like 10 or something like that. Like you definitely need to apply extremely quickly for those internships if you're interested in like a smaller company. And I think for my last internship, I applied in like June of last year, but the applications were ready like I think by May or something like that. But I applied by June. So yeah, get on top of that really quickly if you can.
Definitely. And all the resources that will be posted in chat later about where to apply, I highly suggest all of you to look into that immediately and just apply as soon as you can when you have your resume ready. With that, let's move on to our next Q&A question, which is how much should you know before you apply? I think a lot of you kind of dabbled with this question a little bit, so we can breeze by it. But also as a sub question, what technologies are companies looking for?
I can start here. So, realistically, it's an internship, and like the whole idea is you're not supposed to know much at all about what you're about to work on beforehand, right? Like if anything, school doesn't really teach you to be, in my position, like a software engineer at all. The biggest thing you take away from school is the problem solving aspect. That is the one thing that you learn in school that you can transfer over. But other than that, like it's really company specific what you have to know sometimes. But on a general level, like documentation, and just like knowing how to time manage. But yeah, you're not supposed to know much at all about projects. There's usually time built into the internship, so you can learn the technologies and then complete your project. So don't worry about that.
Thank
I can
you.
go next. I'm sorry about that. So I would say, like, as Dylan mentioned, problem solving, and to go in hand with that, like just knowing data structure and algorithms, mainly because of like the interview process and all that. So I guess like that's to some degree like the minimum. And yeah, there are companies that can get pretty specific. For example, like I interviewed with Apple once, and all their in like their whole interview was about like what is it, like networking and stuff, and I had no clue about it, so I definitely didn't get it. So it depends very much so on like the team and like if they're very like nitpicky about it as well. And yeah, so generally they aren't looking for a specific technology if they otherwise like state it, or if like the company is known to like be very specific. Apple.
Thank you, Freddie.
Yeah, from my experience, especially for an internship, companies don't really care that much about what technologies. I feel like a lot of people really focus on, I should know the newest, coolest thing, and I should be an expert in that, and whatever the most people are using, I need to really focus on that. I think you should just really do what you enjoy, what you like. And like I said, from my experience, at least, companies don't really care that much.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add because everybody made some good points already. But yeah, definitely, as soon as you finish CS1, you're ready to start doing interview prep. That's the main barrier between you and the fat stack. So just to start doing leak code problems like today if you can.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into a little bit about interview preparation in this slide deck. But I definitely think that the sentiment here is it's a prerequisite to a lot of these technical interviews. So like we just were talking about, we're going to jump a little bit more into that with this question. What do most SWE intern interviews consist of? SWE being software engineering. And how did all of you prepare for all the portions? What resources did you use?
So cracking the coding interview for like tech interviews, because tech interviews are usually related to solving like leak code problems. And there's a lot of resources to practice leak code. Like there's leak code itself, then there's binary search, and I think there's this new thing called neat code, which I haven't really looked into too much, but it seems pretty nice. But yeah, just prepping for the technical aspects, and also something I really learned in interviews is that like it's not just a technical aspect. Like they're trying to see how you think, and also like making sure that your personality comes out when you're interviewing, making sure the interviewer knows the type of person that you are, like the type of person that you be on a team. All that stuff is really important, not just like being able to solve the problem the most efficiently as possible. But yeah, like it's all data structures and algorithms for the interviews.
Yeah, 100%. It's always it's always data structures, algorithms. I like some coding problems. I used leak code. Also, even if you're just doing your interviews, most of your interviews itself is good practice, because there's online assessments that they always have you do. That was, I'd say I did more online assessments than I did leak code problems just from interviews.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for me at least, oh, sorry about that. So for me at least, one thing that really helped me. So my sophomore year, I did a ton of leak code questions, whatever. And last year, I didn't really do too many, but I think what really, really helped me was doing mock interviews. Not only with like other students, but also many companies themselves, they'll like set up events, like do mock interviews with students. And I would highly suggest to take advantage if you ever find one of those, just sign up even if you feel like you're gonna completely like flop it or anything. Like those are helped me set up for like getting my two internships this year. So highly recommend that. And yeah, data structures, that's basically all it's about. Oh, and I also recommend a web page called Pramp, which you can do like mock interviews with other people. It's like it can be somewhat, but it can be pretty good.
Yeah.
So hit and miss.
For those who didn't catch that, he mentioned Pramp. It's a website where I assume you can.
Yeah, let's get that in there.
With others. And he also said that companies offer a lot of mock interviews that you can sign up for. Thank you, Freddie.
So I'll touch on the behavioral component. Not every company will have this. Like Facebook, they'll just be like, "Hey, how are you? Here's the problem." But other companies, they will ask you questions about your experience, and it's very important that even if you don't have any experience, you got to just come in with the mindset that you're meant to be there. You have something to offer. So make sure you speak confidently about what you've done, and just act like you got something to offer, because you do. You don't want to say like, "Oh, I don't really know if this was good or whatever." Don't do that. Just be confident. And they're looking to give you a chance. So as long as you leave a good impression and get through the problem, like, you'll probably be fine. Oh, and there is the STAR method. We could add that somewhere. It's just a way of structuring your responses to behavioral questions.
Oh yeah, definitely. Do any of you want to explain a little bit about the STAR method? I don't remember the acronym. Does
I don't either, but it's like situation, task. Someone help me out.
Is it
Action, okay, and then what? Response, okay, yeah. So it's just to prevent you from making like an incoherent, rambling response that's like 5 minutes long. Whenever they ask you a question, I would say keep your response to maybe like 30 seconds maximum, because otherwise you're really just like pushing the limits of people's attention spans, and that way they can fit in some follow-up questions. Keep the conversation on target.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Kirk. For our next question, this is going to be the last question before we go jump into all of y'all's question, the Q&A question, which is, how did you manage school, applying to internships, and interviewing all at once? It seems like it's a lot for someone who's kind of new to all of this.
Give up.
Actually, I'll go first. So I don't know if I'd recommend this for anyone, but going up to your first experience, it's good to have a high GPA. Like, that can help you stand out. But once you get that first experience, you're just like that. You're way above like everyone who doesn't have experience, right? So to answer this question, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of dial back on the grades a bit as I go on. I know not everyone wants to do that, but that's the compromise that I made. So that you could do that too, potentially.
I mean, my advice is that you need a strong reason to like make it through all that, to like, do well in all those like areas, interviewing and like, also your internship and like managing school with all that. Like, you just have to have a really strong motivation, because there will be days when you don't want to do all that, right? Like going to the gym, right? There'll be days where you wake up and you're like, I don't want to go to the gym today. Like, I'm tired. My body hurts. But like, you might have like a gym partner or something that like motivates you. And that's a similar idea. Like, my advice is like, getting support groups, getting friend groups that are like doing the same things that you do, get study groups so that they can help you out and like you can all do well in your classes. Like, it's all about support. I think that was the biggest advice that I got before coming to college from my friend Shang over at like Berkeley, was that like he didn't have a support group his freshman year. He fell out of CS. And I took that to heart, made sure I made like a strong group of friends, and like it's been 3 years, 4 years, and we've stuck together since then. So it just works. That's my biggest piece of advice.
I think to add to that, for the most part, I actually think that applying to internships and interviewing really isn't that much of a time commitment. I think it's more of a mental block for people, like being afraid to apply or being motivated, like Dylan said. Because if you think about it, applying takes maybe a minute per application. I did a lot of applications. It's maybe a minute, 2 minutes per application. If you do 2 interviews a week, that's maybe 2 hours a week. So like you're looking at maybe maximum 5 hours a week for all that, which is well worth it in my opinion. It's more just the motivation and getting yourself to do it aspect. You just have to make sure that you do it every week.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, so I'll also add to that. I agree that there's like 5 hours or like on average, but then there's also like the studying that you have to do, like doing all the leak code questions and all that. So I guess one thing that I did was, and this is kind of sad, but I was like sacrificing, like not doing some things to like make sure that like I take care of that side of like my career and stuff. The other thing, and this kind of adds on to what Dylan said, is like support group. Not necessarily like, I don't know, like super like close friends or whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure what the case is there, but I was part of a club that I mentioned earlier, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineership, and like a lot of them are CS students. They have gotten internships before, and there's so much knowledge in like these kinds of clubs that it, I don't know, like it makes it easier for you to like navigate things and understand without having too many like blockers on the way, like how to navigate and how to get an internship or how to like interview and stuff like that. So that's what I would recommend as well.
Oh, I do have to add one last thing. When I said like, relax your grades a little bit, I don't mean like fail or anything. I mean guys that are like 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, and they don't want to study or do any interview stuff because they don't want to lose that. But if you come down to like 3.5, 3.4, and you have a bunch of good internships, like you're still fine. But please don't go below 3.0. Like that's not good. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Kirk. With that, we're gonna jump into the Q&A questions. So right here we have a list of all the most upvoted Q&A questions by all of you guys. If any of them are duplicates, we'll kind of breeze a little bit by them. Also for all the panelists, feel free to chime in if you have something to say. We don't have to go down, and you might not have an answer for it. It might be too complex of a question. So just feel free to speak up when you have something to add. So the top question we got was, should I focus on leak code problems or projects to add to my GitHub? I'm trying to get an internship for summer 2023.
I think it would depend on what you already have for projects. I would say if you don't have a strong leak code background, that's probably more important, because if you don't have it, you'll squander any chances that you get. But I'll let someone else answer and see if they got a different opinion.
Well, it's kind of both. Like, you need the projects to get the interview, and then you need the leak code to pass the interview. So like, prioritization, like focus on doing the projects, and get those up on your GitHub, fill up your resume with those. Once you get the interview, like once you know you're passing resume screening, like you got to start prepping them, right? Like prepping before the interview with no projects, it'll be hard to be noticed. So, hand in hand.
I agree with that. I think another note to add is sometimes some companies don't even ask leak code style questions. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe Siemens or like some defense companies, they don't even ask you that kind of thing. So maybe you could like, depending on which company you're targeting and what you really want. So like if you want big tech, you're going to really have to go hard on leak code. But if not, like if you're going for a smaller company that probably doesn't ask those kind of questions, like I would go in that case, like focus on the projects, but it's up to you and like what you're targeting. But yeah, in hand with Dylan, I agree.
Yeah, for me personally, I focus more on projects than I did leak code, just because like projects were more fun for me. I'd say just do like if motivation is an issue for you, I just do whatever is most interesting to you.
Definitely. Thank you all for those answers. We're going to jump into the next one now, which is, what are some tips for a technical interview? How would you say the best and most efficient way to prepare for one is?
So do as many problems as you can. That's good, but something that's worked out really well for me is make sure your fundamentals are strong. Like make sure you know what you're talking about and not just like you get a problem that you've seen before and you just like go through the motions. I think that's worked out best for me because I'm not like some people they've done a problem then they fake seeing it for the first time. I'm not good at faking that kind of stuff and I don't really like doing that personally, but yeah, my biggest advice is like make sure your fundamentals are strong because you'll get a question you haven't seen before and you'll be able to solve it in real time. And that's a really satisfying feeling.
I think another tip that I would give is I mentioned this earlier about doing mock interviews. I think one really important thing about mock interviews is practicing on the communication side of things. I feel like people might rush into like a problem or not really explain the problem. And that's like one important thing that some of the interviewers are looking for, whether you can communicate a problem. If you don't understand something, ask a question, explain yourself, etc. So that's one big tip that I would recommend, like doing those mock interviews and like really focusing on what you say and how you say it.
Thank you, Freddie.
I would say don't worry. Like I think I've done a lot of interviews where I failed, and I see a lot of people like that could be devastating for some people, but really just use it as a learning experience. If you don't get the job after you do an interview, just keep applying, keep doing more and more, and like people have mentioned before, it's a numbers game. Don't let failure stop you.
Everybody said covered a lot of this. I would just say if you do happen to get a question that's very similar or the same as one you've seen, might be a hot take, but I would say just do it like you haven't seen it and just get the win. I mean, that's what I think anyway. But some people say like be honest, and then maybe they'll count something for you, but then they might hit you with a question you don't know, and then you lose. So I don't know. It's up to you. Roll the dice.
I have another thing I want to add. One thing that I've done, maybe not is the best practice, but I would suggest like in applying to or trying to interview with companies you might not be interested in the most first, kind of get those out of the way, take those as practice. And then like once you get to the companies you want to actually like really work for or like have a strong desire to work for, like those previous interviews would have been helpful for the current ones. So it's kind of like mock interviews, kind of, but not really.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Freddie. We're going to move on to the next question now, which is what skills/concepts learned in school were the most applicable during your internship?
So I mentioned this before, but problem solving. Like problem solving will carry you through everything you have to do. Just having the ability to identify that whether or not you have a tool and having the ability to find that tool and utilize it, right? Any concepts that I learned in school, like it was nice knowing operating systems because I was able to understand like the streaming stack of my product. But I can also just pick that stuff up on the job once I start anyways, should I need like some domain knowledge. But yeah, mostly problem solving.
Yeah, I think experience like internships are pretty different from school. I would say the most relatable would be like the project-based courses, and just the projects that I did myself. So basically, when you're doing an internship, you're just going to be working on projects.
Yeah,
I think Dylan nailed this question. I don't really have too much to add to that. Like there won't be too many specific things that you learn in school that you use directly. Maybe some version control, maybe the command line or whatever. But yeah, just the general problem solving ability that you get from your education, like Dylan said, is what you can carry to the job.
definitely. Thank you, everyone. So the next question is, what resources did you use outside of school that you feel benefited the most?
I love this question. Hackathons. Y'all, if you don't know about a hackathon, you should look one up. You should go to one. HackGT is in October. Hackathons are the reason why I am where I am. And like I just went to a hackathon this past weekend and it was my first in-person one in 3 years and the energy is the same. Like it just opens your mind to like what's possible with programming and what people are capable of. And there are tons of companies there that you can get jobs from. So like it's just a win-win. I heavily recommend everybody try at least one. I know Ryan won one, like I think it was Night Hacks 2020, 2021. So I mean, like he can also like tell you about it. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, definitely. I would really recommend hackathons as a great learning experience. There's no other thing like it where you just fully learn as fast as possible within a weekend. And that was very motivating for me. And I feel like it's very beneficial to just learning things that are important to getting an internship at the end of the day. Um,
I have
Yeah.
another one. Oh, sorry. You want to go ahead?
no, I thought you were gonna speak. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I think one thing that also has helped me at least like get the foot in the door with companies that otherwise probably wouldn't look at me, was like just applying to those events that they have, like student events, like resume reviews and stuff, and actually connecting with recruiters afterwards and talking to them afterwards kind of gets your foot in there. So I would recommend to like if you get a chance, like companies, they do events all the time. So like just sign up for it and yeah, just like pay attention a little bit and then hit up the recruiter. So that's a suggestion that has worked for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Dylan with the hackathons, especially if you don't have ideas for projects. Like I know I had a lot of trouble thinking of what I wanted to work on. After my first hackathon, I probably had 10 ideas just from doing the hackathon. So if you don't really know what to do, that's a really great place to start.
Yeah, anything you can do to get a recruiter's attention is great. Hackathons are a great way to do that. Obviously, if you know any upperclassmen that they can refer you. Also, UCF is a Hispanic serving institution, which means, well, as part of that, we get a pretty serious recruiting presence from Microsoft, especially. So we have a dedicated Microsoft recruiter. I'm not sure who it is at the moment, but if you ask, like you'll find their email, and I guarantee you, like if you email them and say you're interested in whatever role or whatever, they'll probably give you a shot. Also, somewhat unrelated, but Amazon will most likely interview you if you apply. So, like, definitely apply to them. They get like 1 million head count, and it's a great way to get started.
Definitely. Thank you so much. We're going to take one more question because many students have class at 2, and we don't want to take too long here. So let's do this one. What is the best platform to search for internships to apply to?
I linked it.
Yeah, I agree. LinkedIn, there's a lot of recruiters. You could reach out to recruiters. Also, there's a website I've been using recently called levels.fya. It sorts by pay if you're looking for a higher salary.
Do you have any other suggestions, Kirk and Freddie?
I guess I think Dylan linked it earlier, but that Pittsburgh GitHub website is really good. I've also heard good stuff about this website called Simplify. I don't know if it's like .to or .com. I forgot which one it was. But yeah, Simplify, supposedly it's like easy way to apply to internships, and I've heard good stuff about it on like Reddit and people. So check that out. I haven't used it myself, but it seems interesting.
I think we covered most of the major resources. I'm going to cheat a little and just answer these last 2 questions really quick because I know people like to ask their questions. So what can you do as a freshman? If you have no experience, just get something on your, get some experience doing anything. So like if you can be, get an A in like intro to C, be intro to C, TA, just anything you can do that you have something to talk about, that just something to get you more than nothing. And the cover letters, don't even bother doing it with that.
If I could piggyback off of you right quick, Kirk, for the person who asked about freshmen and stuff, like there are freshman internships. My first internship at Microsoft was a freshman internship. You should 100% apply for those. There's one at Google, Microsoft, Meta. Like a bunch of these companies have these programs. Please apply to them. You don't have to know anything. I did it when I was in intro to C. Okay, like don't be afraid.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for answering all these questions. We're kind of nearing the end of time here, so we will have to, I think I restarted it, but regardless, thank you everyone for coming to this intern Q&A event. Also, can we please give a round of applause to all these amazing panelists?
Thanks for having us, guys. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering all our questions. And I hope everyone got something away from this. We will be submitting a lot of the resources that we have compiled in this chat later in the Discord. So please join the Google Developer Student Club Discord. And that'll be it for today. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. See you guys. See you on campus to say what's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll throw my LinkedIn in here. I don't care.
Can you post those links on the Discord that they send in the chat?